Let's talk some Torah. Parshat Korach is full of intense narrative, including the rebellion that Korach himself organized and led. We've spoken about the power of charismatic leadership and how dangerous that can be. But let's talk about something else, which is the morning after. What must it have been like to be in the community of the Israelites the morning after the rebellion? If you remember, not only is Korach destroyed, not only are Datan and Aviram, the first two recruits for his rebellion, they are destroyed. Not only are the 250 elders that followed this populist treasonous revolt, not only are they destroyed, but the earth opens its mouth and swallows them whole. What is it to be a community that sees tyranny, witnesses it, and then tries to wake up the next morning and function? I asked this question knowing that just a few years ago, that was the United States of America. What is it to regain the possibilities of shared citizenship with those who act in truly, truly dangerous ways? And that's not to say that the threat is over, nor did the threat only begin a few years ago. There is an underbelly to American society that is often based on anxiety and feeling of displacement. What sometimes triggers that is new waves of immigration or economic fears. But the truth is, our willingness to see each other not as neighbor is a problem. And when you have an explosive moment like Korach, where literally the earth can't sustain the pain above and swallows it, what do you do the next day? Well, in our Parsha, the very next day, after the rebellion was quashed through God's miraculous power, the people get up and there is a plague that threatens the entire community, the angel of death, presumably sent by God. And a strange thing happens. Aaron stands up, and the text says he stood between life and death. Aaron, who has seen what a community can do when it turns to chaos, when fear becomes the most powerful shared sensibility. Aaron, who understands all of that, has been threatened by it, perhaps was even seduced by it. We don't really understand what happened with Aaron at the golden calf, but certainly he has witnessed community falling apart. He stands between life and death, and he stops the angel of death. The Midrash makes this even more explicit, that he held the angel of death and would not let it go. Perhaps in our modern context, what we can say as we try to heal from January 6th and what it represented, and the ongoing fight within American society, where some of us are willing to tear the rest of us down. Perhaps what we can learn from this is that we must stand between life and death and say to death, stop. There's not just wrongness in what you're doing, there's self-defeating, terrible anger and violence in what you're doing. Don't you understand that if you act in this way, so convinced that you are right, that you are willing to kill your neighbor, you no longer stand for anything worthwhile at all? You may wave a flag, but if your arms are rippling with angry energy, that flag has turned into a weapon. The symbols of a nation, the symbols of a people, can of course be weaponized, which is why it is important for us to see in Aaron, in this week's Parsha, a model not just for pursuing peace, for which Aaron is known, but learning from painful experience that community must be held together in healthy ways. Because if you don't do that, the earth itself will fall apart. I'd like to tie this up in a bow somehow, but I actually think that ending on this anxious note is the right way to read this part of the Parsha. Respecting life begins with loving my neighbor. And loving my neighbor is impossible when I don't see my neighbor as being as worthy as I am of that life. It is incredibly important for us to stand with sensitivity, to stand as a stable force for community, to stand between life and death, actually. And instead of locating that errand impulse in one figure, let's decide that it is upon us to collectively stand as Aaron did. And remember, personally first, remember that my neighbor deserves love and life. We don't have to vote the same way, we don't have to feel the same way, but I should only wish them well. And I should expect that of them too. America at its best is an expression of loving your neighbor as much as you love yourself, where no one should be left behind and no one should be forgotten. Friends, let's move forward into this day with a little bit of anxious energy and perhaps examining our own attitude towards those with whom we disagree. Bless you, friends. See you tomorrow.